The Galactic Council's emergency meeting. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with chaos. Hundreds of alien leaders from different planets had gathered. The air was thick with tension, and fear was visible on their faces. Some whispered in hushed tones, while others shouted angrily. The Council had faced many threats before: wars, rebellions, even planetary disasters. But today was different. Today, they were not discussing a threat. They were discussing a nightmare. At the center of the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Vexor of the Zorth Empire stood, his reptilian scales darkening with stress. His red eyes scanned the room before he slammed his fist on the table. The room fell silent. "Enough talking," he growled. "We must face the truth. Humans are terrifying." A low murmur spread through the chamber. Some of the younger council members looked confused, but the older ones remained silent, their faces filled with unease. Vexor turned toward a massive holographic screen. With a wave of his clawed hand, he activated a video recording. "This," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "is what happened when we invaded Earth." The screen flickered to life. The first image appeared. A massive fleet of Zorvath warships hovering over Earth's skies. Thousands of soldiers descended, their armor glowing under the light of Earth's sun. The Zorvath Empire had expected an easy victory. But then, the screen changed. The next few seconds of footage sent chills through the council. Explosions, fires, screams. Zorvath soldiers, known as some of the strongest warriors in the galaxy, were running. Their massive plasma rifles were useless. Their advanced armor was shattered. Humans were fighting back, but not like any species the Council had ever seen before. A four-eyed insectoid leader, Supreme Regent Korvac, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Pause the video," he said. The footage froze. A single image remained on the screen: a human soldier, blood running down his face, holding a broken rifle like a club. His uniform was torn, but his eyes were full of rage. "This is madness," said Councillor Drelka of the Ophirans. Her glowing blue tendrils curled inward, a sign of fear. "Humans do not have the technology to match the Zorvath. How could they fight back?" Vexor's claws curled into a fist. "Because they are different. They are unstoppable." The screen resumed playing. More images appeared. Humans using their own weapons after running out of ammo. Wounded soldiers crawling forward, refusing to die. Small groups of humans defeating entire Zorvath squads through strategy, ambushes, and sheer brutality. A single human pilot, outnumbered and outgunned, taking down an entire Zorvath cruiser before crashing. Councillor Vortal, a gray-skinned creature from the Vernac species, leaned forward. "They are resilient, but all species fight for survival." Vexor turned sharply. "No, you don't understand. It's not just survival. They enjoy it." A deathly silence fell over the room. The video continued. A group of human soldiers was pinned down by enemy fire. They were outnumbered, wounded, and exhausted. The Zorvath commander ordered them to surrender. But the humans laughed. They whispered something to each other, then charged forward, completely ignoring their injuries. They fought like mad beasts, using whatever they could: rocks, knives, even their own bare hands. The footage ended with the last human standing, covered in blood, smiling before he collapsed. Chancellor Vexor turned back to the council. "Do you see now?" he said, his voice filled with fear. "They are not like us. They are not like any species we have ever encountered. They fight even when they know they will die. They fight as if they have nothing to lose." A council member from the far side of the chamber, a jelly-like creature from the Omlac species, gurgled in alarm. "But why? What drives them?" A deep, ancient voice spoke from the back of the room. The council turned to look at Grand Scholar Varzok, the oldest and wisest member of the assembly. His wrinkled, four-armed body trembled slightly as he leaned on his staff. "I have studied them," he said slowly. "I have read their history. Humans are not just survivors. They are predators. A chill ran through the council chamber. Every species in this galaxy fears death, Varzok continued. But humans, they embrace it. Their history is filled with war, suffering, and destruction. And yet, they thrive. The room was completely silent now. Vexor took a deep breath and delivered the final words. We thought we were the apex predators of the galaxy. His voice was grim. We were wrong. The council chamber erupted into chaos once more. Some members demanded immediate war. Others argued for peace. But one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer just another species. They were a legend, a nightmare, a force beyond reason. And the galaxy had finally noticed the failed invasion of Earth. The Galactic Council chamber remained in chaos. The footage of the failed Zorvath invasion had shaken even the strongest leaders in the room. Some still refused to believe what they had seen. Others whispered among themselves, questioning if humanity was truly the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Supreme Chancellor Vexor turned off the holographic screen and faced the council. His scales twitched with frustration. You do not understand, he said, his voice filled with tension. The Zorvath Empire sent an entire fleet to conquer Earth. We were prepared for a short battle. We expected humans to surrender once they saw our power. Councillor Drulka of the Ophirans leaned forward. But they didn't, did they? Vexor's claws tightened into a fist. No, they fought back. Hard. The invasion begins. The footage had shown the first wave of the invasion. A flawless attack. Thousands of Zorvath soldiers landed across Earth's major cities. Warships darkened the sky, blocking communication satellites. Energy shields prevented any human escape. The invasion should have ended in hours. But humans refused to surrender. Instead of panic, humans organized themselves with terrifying speed. The human military fought back immediately, using every resource available. Civilians, instead of running, set up ambushes for the invaders. Cities became death traps. Every street, every building, every alley was a battlefield. The first sign of trouble for the Zorvath Empire came within the first 12 hours. A squad of elite Zorvath warriors entered a human city, expecting to capture the local government. They were highly trained, with superior weapons and armor. They had conquered countless worlds before, but they never expected civilians to fight back. In the footage, a squad leader reported what happened. They came out of nowhere. Not soldiers, civilians, ordinary humans. They had no armor, no energy shields, but they attacked us as if they had nothing to lose. They used whatever they could find: Molotovs, explosives, even simple knives. We fired at them. Some fell, but the rest kept coming. They did not stop. Another report followed. A group of our soldiers entered a building. They never came out. We sent a search team. All we found were their empty weapons and human writings on the wall. What did it say? A council member asked. The Zorvath commander hesitated. Then he answered, "Welcome to Hell. The turning point. Human adaptation." Supreme Chancellor Vexor looked around the chamber. The humans didn't just fight. They learned. Every hour, they got better. They studied our tactics, adapted to our weapons, and used our own strategies against us. The council listened in horror. Councillor Vortal, still skeptical, crossed his arms. Even if they are good warriors, they cannot match the power of a galactic empire. Your fleet could have destroyed them from orbit. Vexor shook his head. We tried. We bombed their cities. The chamber fell silent. Vortal leaned forward, and Vexor exhaled. His voice was cold. They kept fighting. The fearless resistance. More footage played. This time, it showed human soldiers operating behind enemy lines. Guerrilla tactics, striking and disappearing. Stealing enemy weapons and turning them against the invaders. Sabotaging warships, cutting off Zorvath supply lines. One report stood out. A high-ranking Zorvath officer was captured by human forces. Normally, captives begged for mercy. But the human commander who took him prisoner simply smiled and said, "You invaded the wrong planet." The officer was later found in his cell, shaking with fear. He refused to speak, only repeating the same words. "They are demons. The impossible to defeat." The Galactic Council chamber was completely silent now. No one spoke. No one moved. Vexor continued. "Our forces were the best in the galaxy. But the humans, they fought as if they had nothing to lose." Another image flashed on the screen. A single human soldier, standing on top of a crashed Zorvath warship, holding a flag. It was clear. The invasion had failed. The Zorvath Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, had been defeated by a species that should have been weaker. A species that should have surrendered. But humans were not like other species. They were something else. Something terrifying. The human mind. A weapon of fear. The Galactic Council chamber remained eerily silent. The leaders of many powerful alien civilizations sat motionless, their minds trying to process what they had just witnessed. Humans were not just warriors. They were something worse. Supreme Chancellor Vexor of the Zorvath Empire turned to the council members. His reptilian features were strained, his voice quieter than before. "You believe this is only about their physical abilities, their resilience, their brute force." He shook his head. "You are wrong." His red eyes scanned the room before he spoke again. "It is their minds that make them truly terrifying." A nervous murmur spread through the chamber. The prisoner's story. Vexor motioned toward a Zorvath officer standing in the shadows. The officer hesitated before stepping forward. His scales were pale, a sign of trauma in his species. "This is Commander Rethis," Vexor introduced. "He was captured by humans during the invasion. He has experienced their mental warfare firsthand." The officer's hands trembled as he spoke. "They didn't break me," Rethis whispered, his voice barely audible. "I thought I would die. I wanted to die. But they didn't even torture me." The council members looked confused. Councillor Vortal frowned. "If they did not harm you, then why do you tremble like a hatchling?" Rethis took a deep breath. "Because they played with my mind." The psychological nightmare. The council listened as Rethis explained what happened. He was captured in a human ambush and taken to an underground facility. He expected interrogation, pain, or even execution. Instead, the humans did something far worse. They talked to him. They sat him in a room, alone, with a single human guard standing outside his cell. Every few hours, they came in, not to demand information, but to ask him questions. They were curious. They wanted to know about his people, his history, his homeworld. They acted friendly, but it was a trick. Every question, every conversation, was a game. They planted doubts in his mind. They made him question his loyalty to the Zorvath Empire. They told him stories of empires that had fallen before, of rulers who had lied to their own people. They made him believe that surrender was an option. "I tried to resist," Rethis whispered. "But their words crawled into my mind. The power of fear. The worst part came at night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard human voices. Not screaming, not threats, but laughter. The humans laughed in the face of war, in the face of death." He recalled a conversation with one of his captors, a human soldier who sat with him one night, casually drinking from a metal cup. "You Zorvath warriors are impressive," the soldier had said. "But you don't get it, do you?" Rethis had remained silent. The soldier leaned closer, his expression darkening. "You think you're the predators." He chuckled. "You're not." He pointed at himself. "We are." Rethis shuddered at the memory. He had been a warrior his entire life, trained to fight since birth. He had seen death countless times, but never, not once, had he felt such overwhelming fear. The fear was not just from what humans could do. The fear came from the fact that they enjoyed the fight. The unshakable will. Rethus clenched his fists. I have fought many wars. I have seen soldiers surrender when faced with overwhelming power. But humans. He took a shaky breath before continuing. They do not surrender. Even when they were wounded, starving, and outnumbered, they kept going. A human soldier, surrounded by enemies, would still fight with a broken limb. A human pilot, with a damaged ship, would choose to crash into an enemy vessel rather than eject. A human prisoner, even with no chance of escape, would use their last breath to insult their captors. They are not like us, Rethus finished, his voice hoarse. They do not think like us. They do not fear death like we do. The chamber was silent once more. The final warning. Grand Scholar Varzak, the oldest member of the council, finally spoke. His deep voice carried across the room like a whisper of doom. I have studied their history, he said slowly. Humans have destroyed themselves many times before. The council members looked at him in shock. Varzak nodded. Yes, they have fought wars against their own kind. They have wiped out entire civilizations, their own civilizations, and yet they survived. They evolved. They adapted. They became stronger. He looked around the chamber, his ancient eyes filled with wisdom. They do not just fight to win, he said. They fight to improve. Every war makes them smarter, faster, more dangerous. He leaned forward. And now, they have turned their eyes toward the stars. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Vexor exhaled deeply and made his final statement. We invaded their planet, he said grimly, and we failed. But what happens when they decide to invade ours? A cold chill spread through the chamber. Because now, they knew the truth. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was a storm waiting to be unleashed. The unkillable human spirit. The Galactic Council chamber felt colder than before. The air was heavy with tension. Every leader in the room had seen the horrors of war, but this was different. Humans did not just fight. They did not just survive. They endured. Supreme Chancellor Vexor's claws tapped against the table as he prepared to continue. His voice, once full of anger, now carried something more dangerous. Fear. You have seen how they fight, he said slowly, his red eyes scanning the council. But what you do not yet understand is that humans do not break. A nervous murmur spread through the room. Councillor Drulka of the Ophirans crossed her glowing tendrils. Every species has a breaking point, she said. Even the strongest warrior will surrender when there is no hope left. Vexor shook his head. That is where you are wrong. He turned to one of his officers. Bring up the Battle of Xylon Ridge. The holographic screen flickered, and a new video played. The council members leaned forward, their eyes glued to the images before them. The last stand at Xylon Ridge. It had been the final battle of the invasion. The Zorvath Empire had pushed human forces into a single location, a stretch of mountains known as Xylon Ridge. The humans were outnumbered 50-1. They had no air support. They had no reinforcements coming. They had no chance of victory. The Zorvath generals had expected an easy slaughter, but the humans had other plans. As the first wave of Zorvath soldiers advanced up the ridge, they were met with relentless firepower. Humans who should have been too exhausted to fight kept shooting. Soldiers who had no bullets left used knives and fists. They fought as if they had already won, one Zorvath survivor reported. They didn't fear death. They didn't hesitate. They weren't even tired. They just kept going. The footage continued. One human soldier had been shot 3 times. His armor was cracked. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. And yet, he stood up. He grabbed the Zorvath soldier in front of him and slammed his head into the ground before charging forward again. A council member from the far side of the room, a reptilian being from the Ralvic Dominion, let out a sharp hiss. This is unnatural, he muttered. Vexor's expression darkened. It gets worse. The nightmare that wouldn't end. For 2 straight days, the Zorvath forces assaulted Cylon Ridge. Every time they thought they had killed the last human, another one appeared. The wounded refused to die. The dying refused to surrender. A recorded radio transmission played through the chamber speakers. It was a Zorvath officer reporting back to his command center. "We have broken through the first line. The humans are falling back." But a pause, heavy breathing. Then gunfire, explosions, screams. They are still coming. They won't stop. A loud roar in the background. Then silence. The transmission ended abruptly. Supreme Regent Korvac, the insectoid leader, shifted uncomfortably. "This is madness," he said. "No species should fight like this." Vexor leaned forward. "They do not fight to win," he said. "They fight to make sure you lose." When defeat was not defeat, the battle had ended when the Zorvath forces finally overwhelmed the humans. Or so they thought. The footage changed to Zorvath soldiers standing over human bodies. The battlefield was silent. The invasion was over. Until one of the bodies moved. A soldier who should have been dead lifted his head, his face covered in blood and dirt. His eyes burned with rage. He coughed, spat blood onto the ground, and despite his injuries, laughed. "You think this is over?" the soldier rasped. "You think you won?" His hand pulled the pin from a grenade strapped to his chest. The video cut to static. The room was dead silent. The terror of humanity. Chancellor Vexor turned off the screen. "That was one soldier," he said, "one human who had lost everything. And yet, even at the end, he did not think of surrender. He thought of taking more of us with him." Grand Scholar Varzak rubbed his temple. "They do not fight for victory," he muttered. "They fight because they do not accept defeat." Vexor nodded. "We learned too late. We thought we had beaten them. We thought they were finished." His eyes darkened. "But humans are never finished." The Council's realization. The Council members sat in stunned silence. For the first time, the true horror of humanity was clear. You could kill a human's body, but you could never kill their will. You could take their homes, but you could never take their spirit. You could destroy their cities, but they would rebuild them stronger than before. A chilling thought spread through the room. The Zorvath Empire had tried to wipe out the humans. They had failed. Now, what would happen when the humans decided to fight back? The final warning. Vexor's voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber like thunder. "We wanted to break them," he said, "but humans do not break." He looked around at the leaders of the galaxy. "They are coming," he whispered, "and when they do, there will be no mercy." The council chamber remained silent, because now they understood. Humanity was not unkillable because of their bodies. They were unkillable because of their will. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The psychological horror of humans. The Galactic Council chamber felt like a tomb. Silence stretched between the alien leaders as they processed the terrifying truth about humanity. They had seen species with great strength. They had seen civilizations with advanced weapons, but they had never encountered a species like this, a species that refused to break. Supreme Chancellor Vexor took a deep breath before continuing. His claws drummed against the table, a nervous tick that betrayed his usual composure. "The humans are more than just warriors," he said. "They are more than just survivors." His eyes flickered toward the dark corners of the chamber. "They are monsters of the mind." A shiver ran through the council. The captured commander's fate. Vexor turned to his officer, Commander Rethis, who had already spoken about his time in human captivity. The reptilian warrior swallowed hard before continuing his report. "I thought I had escaped," he admitted. His voice was rough, filled with haunted memories. "I thought I had left the nightmare behind." His hands trembled. "But the nightmare never left me." The council members leaned in. "I hear them," Rethis whispered, "even now. Their voices, their laughter, their words." Councillor Vortal of the Vernax frowned. What did they say to you? Rithis squeezed his eyes shut. They never threatened me. They never shouted, but they made me doubt everything. He exhaled shakily. Why do you fight for them? One human had asked him. Do you really believe in your empire? Another had whispered. Would they do the same for you? The words dug into his mind like claws. The humans had not tortured him. They had not hurt him. But they had broken him. The unseen war. Supreme Regent Korvac, the insectoid leader, clicked his mandibles. This is disturbing, he admitted, but mind games are nothing compared to real war. Vexor gave a hollow laugh. You think this is just mind games. Let me tell you what we discovered after the invasion. He activated another holographic screen. This time, there were no battlefields, no soldiers, just text, a human book. The title sent chills through the chamber. The Art of War, by Sun Tzu. Confusion spread through the council. What is this? Councillor Drelka asked. Vexor's expression was grim. This was written thousands of years ago, long before humans had space travel. It is a manual for warfare. The council members stared at the ancient text. Vexor continued, we assumed humans only fought with weapons, but they fight with their minds first. This book proves it. He highlighted passages. All warfare is based on deception. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. When you are weak, appear strong. When you are strong, appear weak. The council members shifted uncomfortably. This was not written by a general, not by a king, but by a human who lived thousands of years ago. Vexor leaned forward. They were training for war before they even had interstellar travel. The whispered fear. Grand Scholar Varzak, the oldest among them, finally spoke. We assumed they were primitive, he said softly, that they were simply brutal savages. His voice grew darker. But they have mastered the art of psychological warfare. The council chamber was deadly quiet. Vexor looked around the room. We have received reports from our own soldiers, not just from those who fought in battle, but those who were never captured, those who merely heard rumors of humans. A report flashed on the screen. After hearing about the humans, many of our younger soldiers began experiencing nightmares. Some refused to fight. Others committed treason, turning against their own commanders. Some simply disappeared. A heavy silence hung in the air. Vexor exhaled. They don't need to fight us to win. He turned off the screen. The fear of them is enough. The unseen battlefield. Councillor Drelka, normally calm, now looked uneasy. What are you saying? She asked. Vexor's voice was deadly serious. We made a mistake, he said. We thought we could fight them. He shook his head. But they have already infected us. Councillor Vortal's skin turned pale. What do you mean? Vexor's expression darkened. After the war, some of our own military leaders began studying human strategy. A pause. And some of them vanished. The room tensed. Defectors. Regent Korvac hissed. Vexor shook his head. No, they were taken. Councillor Drelka's voice trembled. By who? Vexor exhaled. We don't know. The final realization. A feeling of deep dread spread through the council. The physical war was over. But the real war had just begun. Humans were not just terrifying because they were strong. They were terrifying because they could turn enemies into allies. Because they could break empires without ever firing a weapon. Because they could spread like a virus that planted doubt, fear, and whispers in the dark. Grand Scholar Varzak closed his eyes. We tried to conquer them, he murmured. But now, he opened his ancient, weary gaze to the council. They are conquering us. The ultimate horror. Supreme Chancellor Vexor looked at his fellow leaders. His voice was low. We cannot win, he admitted. The words felt like a death sentence. We cannot kill them. We cannot control them. We cannot even stop thinking about them. He leaned forward. And that is why humans are the most terrifying species in the galaxy. The ultimate decision: extermination or peace. The Galactic Council chamber was drowning in silence. For the first time in history, the most powerful species in the galaxy agreed on something. They were afraid. Afraid of a species that should have lost. Afraid of a species that refused to break. Afraid of humans. Supreme Chancellor Vexer looked across the room. The once proud leaders of the galactic empires now sat in deep unease. Their expressions were not of anger or arrogance, but of doubt. The Zorvith Empire had tried to conquer humanity. They failed. Now the Council had only two options: exterminate humanity before they become unstoppable. Find a way to make peace before it is too late. But there was one question left unanswered. Was it already too late? The voices of fear. The first to speak was Regent Korvac, leader of the insectoid Klin Dominion. His mandibles clicked anxiously. "We must destroy them now," he declared, "before they spread further." Councillor Vortal of the Vernax growled in agreement. His gray-skinned species had seen war before, but never like this. "They are dangerous," Vortal hissed. "More dangerous than any empire we have ever faced. If we do not act, they will grow stronger." Other council members nodded. The fear of humanity had already taken root. "Do you not see?" Vortal continued. "We are sitting here, terrified of a species that, until recently, was bound to a single planet." He slammed his fist against the table. "If we let them advance, if we let them expand, then in a few centuries, they will be unstoppable." The voices of reason, but not everyone agreed. Councillor Drulka of the Otherans, whose people were known for wisdom, raised a hand. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with thought. "You speak of destroying them," she said. "But tell me, how?" Vortal bared his fangs. "We launch a full-scale assault. Bombard Earth until nothing remains." Drulka shook her head. "We already tried to invade them. That failed." She stood up, her glowing blue tendrils twitching. "And what if we fail again?" she asked. "What if we attack them, and they survive?" A chilling silence followed. The Council had seen what humans did when they were under attack. They adapted. They grew stronger. They learned how to defeat their enemies. "If we fail," Drulka continued, her voice calm but firm, "we will create a monster that no empire can stop." Another murmur spread through the chamber. The fear of humans was not just about what they could do now. The fear was what they would become in the future. The Elder's warning. Grand Scholar Varzak, the oldest being in the chamber, finally spoke. His deep voice cut through the noise. "You argue about extermination," he said. "But tell me, has anyone considered that humans may already know?" The Council turned to him, confused. Varzak leaned forward, his ancient eyes scanning the room. "We assumed they were ignorant, that they did not understand how we saw them." His voice grew darker. "But what if they do? What if they always have?" A chill spread through the chamber. "What are you saying?" Vexer asked. Varzak exhaled. "I am saying that humanity is not just fighting for survival." He looked around the room, his next words sending a wave of unease through every leader present. "They are watching us just as we are watching them. The choice that will shape the galaxy." The Council was divided. One half wanted to end humanity before it was too late. The other half knew that attacking them could doom the galaxy forever. Supreme Chancellor Vexer, once a proud war leader, now felt trapped. There was no easy answer, but one thing was certain: humanity would not wait forever. Vexar exhaled, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We stand at a crossroads," he said. "If we choose war, we must be prepared for the possibility that we are sealing our own fate." His red eyes darkened. "If we choose peace, we must be willing to admit that humanity may one day surpass us all." The decision had to be made. Extermination or peace. The galaxy held its breath. The final revelation. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. No one dared to speak. No one wanted to be the first to say what they all feared. The decision before them was unlike any in galactic history. Destroy humanity before it was too late, or accept that humans would one day surpass them all. The fate of the galaxy balanced on the edge of a blade. Supreme Chancellor Vexer sat back in his chair, his claws gripping the table. He had never felt this powerless before. For years, the Zorvith Empire had believed they were the dominant force in the galaxy. They had crushed countless species, expanded across hundreds of systems. And then they met humans. A species that should have been weak. A species that should have surrendered. A species that refused to break. Now they had to decide. Fight or make peace. The weight of that choice was crushing. A sudden interruption. Just as the council prepared to vote, a deep alarm echoed through the chamber. A holographic screen flickered to life in the center of the room. An incoming transmission. The council members froze. Who could be contacting them at this moment? Vexer's eyes narrowed as he motioned for the signal to be accepted. The screen cleared, revealing the face of someone they never expected to see. A human. The face of humanity. The figure on the screen was a human ambassador, a man with short dark hair, calm blue eyes, and a strange, unreadable expression. He wore no armor, no weapons, just a simple suit, as if this were an ordinary diplomatic meeting. But the very sight of him made some council members flinch. This was not a weak species. This was not a desperate, broken race. This was a species that had defeated the Zorvith Empire, a species that had terrified the galaxy. The human leaned forward slightly. His voice was smooth, steady. I assume you've been discussing us. No one spoke. The silence was heavy. The human smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. I know what you're thinking. Do we wipe them out now before it's too late, before they spread further? The council members shifted uncomfortably. He continued, You fear us. That's understandable. But let me make one thing very, very clear. His eyes darkened. If you attack us, we will survive. We will fight. And we will win. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. We always do. A warning or a promise? Counselor Vortal bared his fangs. Is that a threat? The human chuckled softly. No, he said. That's a fact. A cold realization spread through the room. They had underestimated humans once, and nearly lost everything. Could they afford to make that mistake again? The human leaned back, his expression calm but unreadable. We are not asking for war. We are not demanding anything. But know this, if you come for us, we will make sure it's the last mistake you ever make. Vexer's hands clenched into fists. He had been a warrior for decades. He had led entire invasions, conquered countless worlds. But he had never felt fear like this before. Because this was not arrogance. This was certainty. Humans did not bluff. They did not make empty threats. They simply won. The choice that defined the galaxy. The council members looked at each other. Some still wanted to fight. Some wanted to destroy humanity before it was too late. But most understood the truth. Humanity was not just another species. They were something else. Something new. Something terrifying. If the council declared war now, it might not be this generation that suffered. It might be the next. Or the one after that. Because humans never stopped fighting. They never forgot. And one day, if not now, then centuries from now, humanity would come for them. The final words. Vexer took a slow, steady breath. Then he spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. We will not make an enemy of humanity. A heavy silence followed. Then, slowly, one by one, the other council members nodded in agreement. The decision had been made. Humanity would not be destroyed. Because deep down, the council knew the truth. They were not sparing humanity. They were saving themselves. The future of the galaxy. The human ambassador smiled. not in triumph, not in mockery. Just a simple, knowing smile. "A wise decision," he said. Then, with a final glance at the most powerful leaders in the universe, he spoke the last words of the meeting. "We'll be seeing you." The transmission cut off. The chamber remained still, because the leaders of the galaxy understood one thing. Humanity had not been defeated. They had been recognized. The Council did not own the galaxy anymore. They were sharing it. And perhaps, one day, they would be ruled by it. End of Part 7. The Final Revelation. This conclusion cements humanity's terrifying presence, not as conquerors, but as a force too powerful to challenge. The Council chose peace not out of mercy, but out of fear. Humans had won without ever starting a war.